The day she claimed my Purple Heart service dog was a violation was the day I decided to teach her what a real violation looks like. Picture this. 6 a.m. on a Tuesday in suburban Phoenix. I stumbled to the front door in nothing but boxes and a worn-out army t-shirt, still half asleep, trying to figure out who's been pounding like the sky's about to fall. I swing the door open, nobody there. Just a paper taped right at eye level like a bureaucrat's slap across the face. Notice. OF pet violation. Big, hostile red ink bleeding through flimsy paper. Immediate removal of oversized, aggressive breed dog or face $500 daily fines. I'm standing there staring at this nonsense while my German Shepherd, Rex, sits quietly at my side, wearing his official service vest. He'd already sensed my stress climbing before I even processed what was happening. He's a 4-year-old, professionally trained PTSD service dog doing his job perfectly, and now some power-drunk neighbor is trying to erase him from my life. What would you do if someone came for your lifeline? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I bet your HOA has its own war stories. Let me rewind and explain how I landed in this suburban nightmare. My name's Garrett Morrison. I'm 34, a Purple Heart veteran with 2 Iraq tour behind me, and enough shrapnel scars to make TSA pull me aside every time I fly. About a year and a half ago, my marriage detonated. Turns out Jody really does exist, and he was my wife's CrossFit trainer. I needed a place where Rex and I could heal without judgment. Meadowbrook Estates looked perfect, middle-class subdivision in Phoenix where the desert morning air carries that sharp creosote scent mixed with hot asphalt, and sprinklers tick across lawns like suburban metronomes. I picked this house for one reason: the big backyard. Plenty of space for Rex to burn off energy without annoying the neighbors, and Rex isn't just a pet. He's a lifeline. A German Shepherd trained specifically for PTSD and anxiety response. When my hands start shaking or my chest tightens, he notices before I do. He's trained for deep pressure therapy, navigating me through crowds, even waking me from nightmares. The VA poured $40,000 into his training and he's worth every penny. But apparently, my neighbor Brenda Whitmore had other plans. Imagine, every petty substitute teacher you ever had, only with real power over your property. That's Brenda, white BMW with HOA 1 plates. Moved in 8 years ago and immediately ran for the HOA board like it was a Supreme Court seat. Always standing with arms crossed, lips puckered like she's been sipping pickle juice, radiating "I need to see your manager" energy. She's a realtor who prowls the neighborhood like she's on surveillance duty. I swear she tracks everyone's lawn watering schedule in a spreadsheet. 3 weeks before the violation notice showed up, Brenda knocked on my door. Exactly 7 p.m. She's obsessive about her harassment calendar. Her perfume hit me like chemical warfare before she even spoke. "Your dog's barking disturbs the peace," she declared. Funny, because Mrs. Olivia next door later told me she hadn't heard Rex bark once in 18 months. "He's a service animal," I said calmly, "because the VA trains us to be patient with civilians who don't understand invisible disabilities." Her reply sent a chill straight through me. "I don't see any blindness here." I explained ADA law on psychiatric service animals, careful to sound educational instead of defensive. Her parting words: "A cold, sharp, we'll see about that." The way she smiled triggered every PTSD alarm in my head. The thing is, most of my neighbors are wonderful. Mrs. Olivia makes homemade treats for Rex and shares stories about her late husband's army service. The Rodriguez family waves every time they pass. Their teenagers think Rex is cooler than the Avengers. Even Bob the mailman scratches Rex's ears on his route. But Brenda, she holds sway over 3 allies on the 7-person HOA board, enough to weaponize bureaucracy like a suburban mob boss. And she'd been planning her strike with military precision. Rex had exactly one slip-up. He barked at a raccoon digging through trash at 11 p.m. Totally normal. But Brenda was ready with ring footage, filing a formal complaint under covenant. 7.3 for noise violations. Here's where things got interesting. My IT security background makes me good at digging. And while combing through our HOA documents, I found something off. The original 2008 covenant specifically allowed working animals, no size limits. But the online version, updated in 2019, had quietly removed that clause. Someone had doctored the rules. That night, Mrs. Olivia came by with green tea that tasted like courage. She told me Brenda was recruiting neighbors to log incidents, Bob the mailman warned me she'd been prying into my dog situation. The Rodriguezes admitted she threatened their fence permit when they refused to help her spy. And those 3 foreclosed houses nearby, all former targets of her violation campaigns. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about noise or Rex's breed, it was about money, real estate. Forcing people out so Brenda could reshape the neighborhood to her liking. Game on. Within 72 hours of our first confrontation, a certified letter arrived heavy enough to choke a horse. The envelope screamed legal intimidation, red ink bleeding through like it wanted revenge on the trees it came from. Inside was Brenda's masterwork of petty tyranny: demand for an emergency board hearing within 3 days, multiple violations, listed dog size, aggressive breed bans, even retroactive noise complaints about that one raccoon. And of course, the letter was CC'd to all 7 board members, creating an official-looking paper trail meant to disguise her vendetta as legitimate enforcement. The threat was loud and clear: appear before the board or face $500 daily fines and legal action. The next morning, I slammed my coffee mug onto the granite counter harder than I meant to. The crack echoed like a gunshot. Rex pressed against me instantly, whining softly, sensing my stress was redlining. But here's where Brenda made her fatal mistake: she picked a fight with someone who knows how to research. That night, I dug deep into federal disability law. My VA counselor's words came back to me: federal law always trumps local rules when it comes to disability accommodations. The ADA isn't optional, it's constitutional bedrock. No private covenant can override it, no matter how fancy their wording sounds. So I cross-referenced everything HOA powers against federal protections. What I uncovered would make any civil rights attorney start billing hours. HOAs can regulate a lot of things, but they cannot override federal disability law. Period. Game over. Brenda might as well have tried outlawing gravity itself. My digital forensics had uncovered something far more explosive. Remember those mysteriously edited covenants? I'd found the missing piece buried deep in archived web pages Brenda probably assumed had disappeared for good. The original governing documents from 2008 were crystal clear. Working animals, including service dogs, therapy animals, and livestock guardians, were exempt from breed bans and size limits. That safeguard had been quietly stripped out in a 2019 routine update nobody recalled voting on. Someone had deliberately sabotaged our legal foundation, erasing protections for disabled residents. The following morning, intelligence rolled in from my growing neighborhood spy network. Mrs. Olivia showed up at my door, the scent of jasmine tea clinging to her sweater, carrying news that made my blood boil. Brenda had been making the rounds like some suburban Gestapo, recruiting neighbors to document anything they could against Rex. She pressured the Rodriguezes into installing security cameras, her safety pitch thinly veiled code for help. Me build a harassment file. Even Bob, our mailman, had noticed her sudden obsession with my delivery schedule and her pointed questions about my dog. She was building a prosecution case as if Rex were guilty of war crimes instead of barking at raccoons. But Brenda's surveillance campaign was about to blow up in her face harder than a gender reveal party during wildfire season. My cybersecurity background includes digital evidence collection, so I had already begun documenting everything with the same meticulous precision I once used tracking insurgent chatter in Baghdad. Cameras covered every angle of my property. Screenshots logged every social media exchange, time-stamped. Audio recording devices were ready for any future encounters, perfectly legal in Arizona's one-party consent state. Then came Brenda's psychological warfare phase. She began circling my block daily, her white BMW prowling like a shark in shallow water. Her timing was surgical. She always showed up during Rex's yard time, phone in hand, waiting to weaponize any snippet of behavior as aggression. Her exhaust lingered in the desert air like a predator marking territory. That's when the story turned into something straight out of a crime drama. While tracking her stalking routine, I stumbled across property records that revealed her real agenda. Over the past 2 years, 3 neighborhood homes had gone into foreclosure. Each family had been the target of sudden, aggressive HOA violation campaigns, and every single property had been bought below market value by buyers represented by plot twist Brenda's realty firm. This wasn't random harassment. It was a calculated real estate scheme designed to terrorize homeowners into distressed sales that padded Brenda's commission checks. I reached out to those displaced families over the weekend, and their stories all followed the same script: surprise violation notices for trivial infractions, escalating fines that made selling seem like the only option, then Brenda swooping in with a friendly offer to rescue them from the HOA nightmare at bargain prices. The pattern was undeniable, predatory, and illegal under fair housing laws, but Brenda had made one fatal error. She targeted a disabled veteran with federal protections, military strategy training, and a service dog whose legal status was ironclad under constitutional law. As the kangaroo court hearing drew near, one thing became painfully clear. This fight was no longer just about Rex. It was about protecting future families from a suburban predator who weaponized bureaucracy to steal homes. Time to show this HOA Karen what real justice looks like when you pick the wrong target. The hearing was set for Thursday night in the community clubhouse, and Brenda had stacked the deck like a Vegas dealer with a gambling problem. Her loyal three-person voting bloc was in place: Chuck, a retired cop who still acted like he was on patrol; Linda, an accountant who viewed the world through spreadsheet-colored glasses; and Dave, a contractor who owed half his business to Brenda's referrals. But her real masterstroke came 2 days earlier. A community-wide email blast titled "Dangerous Dogs in Our Family Neighborhood." The message painted Rex as a menace threatening children and property values, conveniently omitting his federal service, animal status, and my disability. The smell of industrial carpet cleaner hit me as I walked into the clubhouse. Rex padded beside me in his official service vest, looking more professional than half the board. I'd come prepared: service dog paperwork, printed copies of federal law, and my phone recording everything because Arizona's one-party consent rule is a gift. Brenda kicked things off with weaponized parliamentary procedure, limiting my speaking time. She even had a gavel, because apparently neighborhood power trips require props. When I tried to present my ADA documents, Chuck cut me off. "Mr. Morrison, how do we even know this animal is trained? Anyone can buy a vest online." That's when Rex showed why the VA invested $40,000 in his training. Without any command from me, he sensed my stress and calmly stretched across my feet, performing deep pressure therapy with the precision of a medical device. The irony was delicious: Rex proving his professional training in real time to people doubting his legitimacy. Chuck shifted uneasily, probably realizing Rex's discipline outstripped his own. Then I dropped the smoking gun evidence, the deleted covenant language protecting working animals, and demanded to know how those protections vanished. Brenda deflected with bureaucracy. "Routine updates approved by membership vote." "Great," I said evenly. "Let's see the minutes and voting records for those changes." The silence that followed was hotter than a Phoenix summer. She had nothing because the vote never happened. She had simply edited the online covenants, assuming no one would notice or challenge her. Mrs. Olivia had come specifically to testify for me, and her statement cut through the nonsense like a blade. "Rex is gentleman dog. Never bark, never aggressive. Problem is not dog. Problem is woman who make trouble for good people." The room shifted. Neighbors suddenly realized they were watching a sham hearing. Brenda threatened immediate fines if I continued disrupting, which was rich considering I was following procedure while she trampled due process. The board still delivered its scripted 4-3 vote to uphold the violations. But the real victory was exposing Brenda's methods to the community. Neutral neighbors left disturbed by what they'd witnessed, and my weekend digging paid off in spades. It turned out Brenda's firm hadn't just profited from 3 foreclosures, she had also been the listing agent when those families first bought their homes. She'd been running a long con: sell the homes, wait for improvements, then weaponize the HOA to force foreclosures she could flip for profit. Real estate farming with people's lives as the crop. After the hearing, neighbors approached me quietly. The Rodriguezes asked for my attorney's number after receiving violation notices about their fence height. Mrs. Patterson mentioned pressure over her garden gnomes. Even the Johnsons had been warned about their basketball hoop. Brenda wasn't just targeting me, she was working her way through the entire neighborhood. The HOA's retaliation came swift and brutal: $500 daily fines, immediate notice that unpaid violations would trigger liens within 30 days, and the ultimate threat: get rid of Rex or face foreclosure. Brenda herself delivered the ultimatum. Sheriff's deputy at her side. Intimidation theater meant to paint me as a criminal instead of a disabled vet facing discrimination. But her aggression revealed the weakness I'd been waiting for. In military intel training, we learned that desperate opponents make mistakes. Brenda's escalation was creating an undeniable trail of evidence. I'd already contacted Amanda Torres, a veterans legal aid attorney specializing in ADA compliance. Her reply to Brenda's newest round of threats came down to a single word: perfect. Federal civil rights violations don't just vanish. They come with heavy financial consequences, and HOA insurance doesn't cover discrimination claims. If this ever reached a courtroom, each board member would be personally responsible. That night, Rex and I sat in the backyard, the desert sunset washing the sky in fiery streaks that felt like justice itself. That's when it hit me: Brenda had just given me the weapon I needed to end this battle once and for all. Her panic soon spiraled into theatrics worthy of a soap opera script. Barely 3 days after staging her sham of a hearing, Brenda hired a private investigator as if her own stalking wasn't obsessive enough. The PI arrived in an unmarked van with blacked-out windows, parked on the street like some bargain bin FBI operation. His lenses looked powerful enough to catch Rex's molars from blocks away. He filmed everything: fetch games, bathroom breaks, even Rex's service drills where he practiced calming my anxiety. Watching him on my security cameras, I couldn't help but laugh. He was clearly hoping to capture a vicious animal, yet Rex's greatest menace was an overenthusiastic tail wag. Meanwhile, Brenda cranked up the psychological warfare past every moral boundary. Somehow she dug up my ex-wife's number, likely courtesy of her new spy, and started probing for dirt about my mental health. Jennifer, to her credit, told her exactly where to shove that nonsense, but the invasion of privacy was staggering. The reek of desperation was thicker than Phoenix asphalt in July. Then came the moment that proved Brenda had detached from reality entirely: the animal control stunt. She filed a complaint accusing Rex of being unlicensed and dangerous. That Tuesday morning, Officer Martinez appeared at my door, clearly uncomfortable before he even spoke. "Sir, I need to follow up on a report about an unlicensed dog," he said, nodding toward Rex in his service vest and the stack of records I'd already lined up. I handed him everything: registration, vaccination records, city license, ADA certification. He flipped through it like a pro who'd seen this game too many times. "Mr. Morrison, this is obviously a bogus complaint," he said, shaking his head. "False reports to animal control are misdemeanors in Arizona. We see plenty of these in HOA disputes, and frankly, I'm sick of taxpayer money being wasted on neighborhood grudges. What most people don't realize is that lying to government agencies isn't just irritating, it's a crime." Martinez already knew Brenda's reputation from earlier complaints and was quietly building his own case against her, but her grand finale of self-sabotage came online. She launched multiple fake accounts, spreading lies about my PTSD being fabricated and painting me as some unstable veteran. She even posted pictures of Rex without his vest, snapped during his downtime in my yard, trying to pass him off as nothing more than a pet. Unfortunately for Brenda, my cybersecurity background made tracing those accounts to her IP address easier than spotting sand in Arizona. Every defamatory post, every invasion of privacy, every attack on my disability was documented with forensic precision that prosecutors dream of. The neighborhood wasn't blind. Support began snowballing. Mrs. Olivia formed a Rex Appreciation Committee, complete with homemade treats and moral support. The Rodriguez family planted a sign in their yard: "We support our veterans," aimed straight at Brenda's windows. Even Bob the mailman lingered longer on deliveries, scratching Rex behind the ears in full view of her surveillance cameras. And then the story thickened beyond belief. A contact of mine at the Phoenix Business Journal, already knee-deep investigating HOA corruption, had been digging into Brenda's dealings. My case turned out to be the smoking gun. What she uncovered was damning. Brenda's real estate firm was drowning in lawsuits over hidden property violations. She wasn't just running a foreclosure racket, she was on the brink of bankruptcy, desperate for commission checks from forced home sales to keep her own house. Suddenly, everything made sense: the spying, the complaints, the smear campaign. Brenda wasn't just vindictive, she was fighting for her financial survival, and veterans like me were disposable collateral. But her fatal misstep was assuming I lacked strategic training. While she played neighborhood detective, I was quietly assembling a federal civil rights case that would turn her harassment into a legal warhead aimed squarely at herself. My attorney, Amanda Torres, combed through the evidence and gave me the kind of verdict that lifted the weight of my Purple Heart. "Garrett," she said, This is the clearest disability discrimination case I've seen in 15 years. Federal law doesn't just protect you, it makes Brenda personally liable. Damages could hit six figures, and every board member who voted for those violations. They'll face their own lawsuits. HOA insurance doesn't cover civil rights. Their assets are all on the line. Watching Brenda's BMW circle past my house for the fourth time that day, I realized she'd spent the last 3 weeks gift-wrapping the evidence that would ruin her career, drain her bank accounts, and topple her little kingdom. Sometimes, victory isn't about attacking, it's about letting your opponent destroy themselves while you collect the proof. Sometimes, justice arrives dressed in property records and irony. So, while Brenda played suburban Gestapo with her telephoto lenses, I turned my investigative skills on her. What I found made my military intelligence training feel like preparation. For this exact mission, the HOA queen who had weaponized rules against everyone else had been breaking them for years. County records revealed violations so blatant they'd make a corrupt politician blush. Her pool house, built 18 inches too close to the property line, in violation of the same covenants she recited like gospel. Her decorative fence, 1.5 feet tall, hiding an unpermitted shed she'd converted into her real estate office. But the best part, the detail that had me laughing until Rex came over to check if I was okay, was that she'd been running an unlicensed business out of her home for 3 years. Zoning records confirmed she never filed permits. Tax filings showed she was claiming commercial deductions on that shed. HOA covenants explicitly forbade home businesses. By her own rules, she owed around $52,000 in fines. The same woman threatening my house with foreclosure had been living in Violation City since long before I moved in. The irony was rich enough to spread on toast. A lesson from my VA counselor came rushing back. People often project their own guilt onto others. Brenda's relentless enforcement against the neighborhood wasn't just power, it was displacement. She was terrified her own skeletons would surface. Still, uncovering her hypocrisy left me with a moral choice. I could report her violations immediately and watch her world collapse, but that would make me no better than her. Honor doesn't vanish just because the enemy fights dirty. Instead, I decided this intel would serve best as leverage, a deterrent rather than a bomb. Mutually assured destruction. Amanda Torres explained it perfectly. Discrimination cases are practically unwinnable for the defense when you can show the accuser breaks the same rules she's been selectively enforcing while violating them herself, Amanda said, barely hiding her excitement. That's textbook discrimination and fraud. Every letter she's sent, every fine, every violation, all proof of a corrupt system targeting residents while shielding her own misconduct. And the cherry on top, her obsessive documentation. She's basically recorded her own hypocrisy. Brenda's downfall was writing itself. I didn't need to swing the hammer, just keep watching as she buried herself deeper. That night, as the desert sky once again blazed with poetic justice, I sealed the evidence with Amanda and mapped out multiple strategies. Rex and I had moved from defense to offense without ever firing a shot. Sometimes patience beats intimidation. And Brenda was about to learn that the hard way, but war requires allies. It was time to build a team that would make her HOA empire look like child's play. First recruit, Amanda Torres from Veterans Legal Aid, a civil rights attorney with a personal vendetta against discriminatory HOAs. In her downtown Phoenix office, surrounded by shelves that smelled like ink and justice, Amanda laid out the nuclear option. Federal civil rights violations don't just carry penalties, she said, spreading case law like a battle map. They create personal liability. Insurance doesn't cover it. Board members' own assets are exposed. That was the golden round I needed. Most people don't realize HOA policies exclude discrimination coverage. That meant Brenda and her allies weren't just playing with community funds, they were gambling their own houses. Ally number 2. Mrs. Olivia. Once the quiet widow next door, she had transformed overnight into the neighborhood's resistance leader. Her network of connections rivaled a political campaign machine. Her Rex defense funded all began with a mason jar sitting quietly on her kitchen counter, but within days it had transformed into a full-fledged legal expense account. Over green tea that tasted like courage in a cup, she confided that many neighbors were frightened of Brenda. Still, even more were furious that a respected veteran was being bullied. We started small and quiet, but when it was time, we struck loud. Mrs. Olivia's casserole brigade quickly evolved into an undercover intelligence network, cleverly masked as casual social visits. Every potluck dinner, every stroll around the block, every run-in at the grocery store became a chance to track Brenda's harassment patterns and quietly rally more allies. Unexpectedly, tech support came from Miguel Rodriguez Jr., the 17-year-old across the street, who had been watching the chaos like his own personal Netflix series. His digital expertise made my own IT background look like something carved into stone tablets. Methodical as a federal prosecutor, he had been capturing Brenda's entire social media smear campaign. "Mr. Morrison, I've archived every fake account she's made," Miguel told me, showing off files organized with more precision than most corporate databases. "She's been posting defamatory garbage about your PTSD, which violates both state privacy laws and federal disability protections. Plus, I traced her IP as she's left digital fingerprints on everything." The fourth ally emerged from Brenda's own camp. Chuck, a retired cop and HOA board member, had grown uneasy with her tactics. At a chance meeting in the Circle K, where the diesel smell lingered as heavily as his moral conflict, he pulled me aside. "Look, I voted with Brenda because I thought it was about fair rule enforcement," he admitted, staring into his coffee like it might have answers. "But her actions since the hearing, unprofessional, maybe even illegal. If she keeps pushing, I may have to rethink my position." The movement spread like wildfire both online and face-to-face. Casual dog park chats turned into strategy sessions where neighbors traded intel on Brenda's surveillance. A petition defending service animal rights gained 47 signatures in just 3 days, complete with heartfelt notes from residents about their own experiences with her bullying. My cybersecurity background became invaluable. Motion-activated cameras with cloud storage eliminated tampering. Audio recorders documented every HOA encounter well within Arizona's one-party consent law. Every threatening email, nasty letter, and surveillance attempt was logged with forensic precision that would make FBI agents proud. The media prep came through a journalist I knew at the Phoenix Business Journal. She was already building a piece on HOA corruption across Arizona, and my case gave her the human interest hook she needed. A disabled veteran versus suburban tyranny, complete with clear federal violations. "This story has everything," she said. Disability discrimination, real estate fraud, grassroots organizing, and a service dog who outshines the people trying to ban him. But the core of our strategy rested on understanding Brenda's psychology. My military training taught me how to study an enemy's motives, and Brenda was a textbook case of narcissistic control addiction. She needed domination to feel powerful, which meant she would inevitably overreach in public, revealing her true self to witnesses. Our plan was simple: give her the space to expose herself, while we maintained dignity and the legal high ground. The evidence vault was complete: a harassment timeline, audio and video recordings of discriminatory meetings, proof of her real estate scam, and digital forensics connecting her to online defamation. Rex's job stayed the same: be the model service dog, embodying dignity in the face of petty cruelty. 10 days until the next HOA meeting. All we had to do was let Brenda keep digging her own grave while we prepared to bury her authority once and for all. Her desperation soon reached reality TV levels. With her influence collapsing, she resorted to criminal tactics. First came bribery. She cornered Jake Stevens, the city building inspector, during his lunch break. Sliding an envelope across the table, she urged, "There's got to be something wrong with that veteran's property code violations, safety hazards, anything that needs immediate action." Jake, a 20-year city employee who had seen every scam in the book, recorded the whole thing on his phone. Then he calmly reminded her that bribing a public official is a federal crime. Witnesses later said her face went through more color shifts than an Arizona sunset before she bolted. By that evening, an ethics complaint had been filed, triggering an official misconduct investigation. Jake became an unexpected ally, not only warning me about possible false complaints but also documenting Brenda's attempt to weaponize city government. Her real undoing, though, came through her escalating online smear campaign. She created fake accounts on Facebook, Nextdoor, Instagram, posting cropped photos of Rex off-duty to make him look aggressive. She accused me of faking disability and even leaked private medical info she had somehow dug up. Miguel dismantled her operation. He traced every account back to her home IP, matched timestamps with her surveillance, and documented it all. She doesn't get how the internet works, he said, pulling up forensic-level analysis. Same passwords, same posting quirks, same patterns. A freshman computer science major could prove it's her. Meanwhile, the community's patience was snapping. Mrs. Olivia's rally for Rex drew over 60 neighbors, with veterans groups stepping in to frame it as a wider discrimination issue. Yard signs appeared overnight. "We stand with Rex." Brenda struck back by unleashing petty violation notices. Mailbox heights, gross color, basketball hoops visible from the street. But her vendetta only built more enemies. Then she went after my livelihood. She contacted my employer, claiming I was unstable and that Rex was a workplace hazard. She even filed a bogus OSHA complaint and began calling my clients. She couldn't have chosen a worse target. My employer, a cybersecurity firm committed to diversity and veteran support, not only backed me but also offered their legal team. Their HR director actually thanked me. Her attack exposed hidden bias among some vendors. The backlash was so severe that her real estate license came under investigation for violating fair housing laws and professional ethics. But Brenda wasn't done unraveling. Her late-night drive-bys became constant. Threatening notes appeared. She even tried door-to-door smear campaigns, which neighbors brushed off as unhinged rants. The final straw came at a grocery store confrontation. Brenda accused elderly Mrs. Olivia of supporting dangerous dogs and demanded she stop giving Rex treats. Shaken, Mrs. Olivia called police. Officer Martinez, who had handled her earlier false complaint, immediately recognized the escalation and issued Brenda a formal stalking warning. Within days, 3 HOA board members reached out privately, eager to distance themselves. Chuck renounced her methods. Linda worried about reputational fallout. Dave feared city ties would crumble. The trap was set. All that remained was Brenda springing it herself at the next board meeting. Her final meltdown eclipsed everything before. Facing loss of power and criminal investigations, she crossed into outright insanity. First was the attempted dog theft. While I was at a VA appointment, she hired a shady animal removal guy off Craigslist, claiming Rex was a dangerous stray. Luckily, Mrs. Olivia was gardening and called me in a panic. I arrived to find Rex safe inside while the contractor, baffled, tried to explain why he thought he was doing legitimate work. Once police explained service animal theft is a felony, he fully cooperated. Another criminal complaint went on Brenda's record. Her lowest blow was the fabricated bite incident. She filed a police report claiming Rex attacked a neighborhood child, describing injuries that supposedly required treatment. Investigators shut it down for hours. No child had been treated. No parents had reported anything. And the victim didn't even exist. Confronted with inconsistencies, Brenda's story collapsed, morphing again and again until she finally claimed the family had moved away. Officer Martinez, already growing accustomed to Brenda's routine of phony reports, finally cited her for filing false police complaints, a misdemeanor offense that would appear on any background check tied to her real estate license renewal. "Mom, this is your third false report in just 2 months," he told her, according to the incident record I later obtained. Filing fraudulent police reports drains taxpayer resources and is a criminal act. This is your last warning before charges are filed. Meanwhile, the community protection network that had formed around Rex and me was functioning like a neighborhood watch turned inward, keeping an eye on the so-called watcher, Mrs. Olivia. Organized round-the-clock surveillance shifts, framed as friendly neighbor drop-ins. Miguel Rodriguez and his buddies launched a group chat that mapped Brenda's BMW movements with near-military accuracy. Even Bob, the mail carrier, began timing deliveries so Rex was never left alone outside. But Brenda's most devastating misstep was securing and publicly distributing my private VA medical records. At what was supposed to be a meeting about holiday decorations, yes, she managed to weaponize Christmas planning. She stood up and read aloud details of my PTSD diagnosis and treatment. The room froze, the silence thick, as neighbors realized they were watching a federal crime unfold in real time. HIPAA violations carry serious consequences, but weaponizing protected health information to harass a disabled veteran pushes the offense into felony territory. Amanda Torres nearly dropped her coffee when I called her about the breach. "Garrett, this is prosecutorial gold," she said. "Medical privacy laws don't play around." And using that information to discriminate against a disabled person is exactly what federal civil rights laws were written to stop. The Veterans Legal Aid Organization wasted no time filing complaints with both the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Justice. Brenda had essentially gift-trapped us a federal case, one with the potential for six-figure penalties and criminal charges. Professionally, the fallout was piling up as fast as summer heat in Phoenix. Clients were quietly switching to other agents, unnerved by her increasingly erratic behavior. The local realtor association began putting distance between itself and her reputation. Insurance carriers started probing liability risks connected. Two agents under criminal investigation. My own digging uncovered the last missing piece of Brenda's corruption puzzle: embezzlement of HOA funds. Pool maintenance contracts had been padded to cover spa services at her home. Landscaping invoices included work done on her personal yard. She had been dipping into community money as if it were her private bank account for over 2 years. The incriminating evidence wasn't even hidden. Any resident could have spotted it in the HOA financial records, fully accessible under Arizona law. Her mental unraveling became impossible to ignore. Public meltdowns in the grocery store, railing against fake veterans, aggressive confrontations with other service dogs at the park, rambling social media posts that revealed alarming instability. Friends and family started voicing concern about her judgment. The breaking point came when Brenda declared her intention to have Rex euthanized as a dangerous animal, insisting her role as HOA president gave her power to override federal protections. The statement, captured on multiple cell phones, Miguel's ever at the ready, set the stage for the ultimate showdown. Through it all, Rex remained the picture of professionalism, his calm demeanor throwing the surrounding chaos into sharp relief. Kids in the neighborhood even asked their parents why the adults couldn't behave as well as the dog everyone was fighting over. With 10 days left until the next board meeting, the stage was set. Brenda would walk into a packed room filled with witnesses, cameras, and 3 months' worth of her own self-inflicted destruction. The clubhouse had never seen anything like it. Over 80 residents crammed into a space built for 40, media crews lining the walls, veterans advocacy groups sending representatives. The air was thick with tension, a mix of anticipation, sweat, and industrial carpet cleaner. Brenda banged her little gavel to call the meeting to order, attempting to project authority despite the sea of hostile eyes and rolling cameras. Dressed in a power suit, screaming "I'm totally fine," her hands trembled as she shuffled through the very papers destined to become evidence. "Tonight, we address ongoing violations of community safety standards," she began, her voice edged with the desperation of someone cornered. "Federal disability laws do not override private covenant enforcement, and this board will not be bullied by legal threats." The statement was so legally incorrect that Amanda Torres visibly winced. Federal law absolutely overrides private covenants in matters of disability accommodations. That's the foundation of civil rights legislation. I entered with Rex in full service vest, documentation folder in hand, carrying the quiet confidence that comes from having federal law on your side. The mood in the room shifted instantly. There we stood, the service dog and the veteran he protected, confronting suburban tyranny with calm dignity. Mrs. Olivia rose first during public comment, her voice steady with the authority of lived hardship. "Rex is good dog. He helped good man heal from war. Brenda is problem, not dog. Community, no truth." The Rodriguez family then submitted a petition with 67 signatures backing service animal rights, including personal accounts from neighbors who had seen Rex's impeccable behavior firsthand. Local veterinarian Dr. Sarah Kim testified about his temperament evaluation, calling him one of the best trained dogs she'd seen in decades of practice. 3 military veterans stood in silent unity during my testimony, sending the room's emotions soaring. As I calmly laid out a timeline of harassment and explained data protections in plain language, you could almost see neighbors connecting the dots about Brenda's misuse of authority. "Service animals hold the same access rights as wheelchairs," I said, locking eyes with board members now acutely aware of their legal exposure. "Federal law doesn't recognize HOA carve-outs for discrimination." That's when Amanda Torres presented the federal civil rights complaint. Brenda's face shifted colors like a chameleon as the attorney delivered her precise, surgical breakdown: disability discrimination, selective enforcement, and personal liability for board members complicit in violating federal law. Amanda explained that the HOA's insurance policy excluded civil rights violations, leaving board members personally responsible for damages, and then came Brenda's collapse. She erupted mid-presentation, screaming about fake veterans and demanding proof of invisible disabilities. While cameras captured every unhinged second, she shrieked, her composure gone. This man pretended to be a veteran just to score special treatment for his giant dog. I didn't buy her accusations or her dismissal of my PTSD diagnosis. The crowd didn't either. Neighbors stood up one after another to defend my service. Chuck, a retired police officer and board member, issued a public apology for allowing harassment to spiral this far. Linda demanded an immediate vote of no confidence, while Dave tried to quietly back away from the disaster unfolding. The Phoenix Business Journal reporter jumped at the opening, pressing Brenda to explain her own property violations while cameras rolled. Watching her deny photographic proof of illegal additions and unlicensed business activities made for viral footage that would haunt her career indefinitely. She tried to justify it, claiming board members weren't bound by the same standards as residents, apparently forgetting that admitting selective enforcement on camera is practically an open invitation for prosecutors. Then came the knockout blow. Amanda Torres unveiled a full dossier of Brenda's infractions: pool house setbacks, a fence built too high, and an unauthorized shed office, plus financial records showing she had embezzled HOA maintenance funds. Right on cue, Officer Martinez walked in to serve Brenda with a restraining order protecting Rex and me from her ongoing harassment. It was perfect stagecraft, authority stepping in to shield victims from their tormentor. The sound of the papers shuffling felt like justice itself as Brenda realized her campaign had officially backfired into police protection for her targets. The board's decision was quick and absolute, 6-0. Brenda stripped of her role as president, her only action being to abstain while muttering about conspiracies. A secondary motion erased every violation tied to Rex, passing without opposition. The board issued a formal apology and agreed to cover my legal costs out of HOA funds. Her exit was pure spectacle. She ranted that she wouldn't accept removal, threatened to sue the entire neighborhood for defamation, and stormed out screaming about fake veterans and rigged elections as cameras caught her BMW speeding away from the community she had tormented for months. Rex, steady as always, stayed calm through the uproar, offering deep pressure therapy whenever my anxiety spiked, and gratefully accepting pats from dozens of neighbors. He had become the community's unofficial mascot, a living symbol of dignity prevailing over small-minded cruelty. The mood in the clubhouse after Brenda's ouster felt like Liberation Day. Mrs. Rodriguez was voted interim president, and emergency policy reforms were set in motion to prevent future abuse of power. Within 6 months, Meadowbrook Estates transformed from a war zone of petty disputes into a model neighborhood now studied by housing advocacy groups for its inclusive governance. Under President Maria Rodriguez, the HOA adopted transparent enforcement practices and introduced Rex's rule, federal service animal protections paired with resident education on disability accommodations. Brenda's downfall played out like dominoes. Criminal charges for false reports and HIPAA violations brought probation and mandatory community service at a veterans rehab center. Poetic justice. Hollywood couldn't have scripted better. Her real estate license was suspended during ethics investigations, and the embezzlement evidence forced her to sell her heavily non-compliant home to cover restitution and legal bills. The restraining order cut off all contact with Rex and me, though it wasn't needed. Brenda relocated to Tucson soon after losing her house. Sometimes karma just needs evidence and federal law enforcement to do its work, but my victory reached far beyond winning against one bully. The support system forged during that battle became true friendships that helped my PTSD recovery more than medication ever could. Rex's training had been validated in the toughest real-world trial imaginable, and our home finally turned into the sanctuary I had always hoped for. The federal civil rights settlement created a $50,000 legal fund for other veterans facing discrimination, managed through Veterans Legal Aid under Amanda Torres. What began as my personal struggle became systemic change. Future disabled veterans now had protection from HOA harassment campaigns. Our case is now standard reading in veteran advocacy training, with Amanda using it as a model for building airtight civil rights lawsuits. Her golden rule: document everything. because evidence of harassment builds lawsuits that carry heavy financial consequences for discrimination. Our story inspired others nationwide to fight back instead of suffering in silence. Rex became an informal therapy dog for fellow PTSD veterans, not officially, but through the community bonds that formed around shared challenges and service animals. The ripple effects spread to the HOA industry. Insurers started requiring disability compliance training, and management companies began hiring legal experts to review enforcement policies. Nobody wanted to risk the personal liability that had ended Brenda's career. The neighborhood itself flourished. An annual Service Animal Appreciation Day now raises funds for veteran services while teaching residents about disability rights. A dog park built with money recovered from Brenda's embezzlement became a community hub where Rex plays with countless four-legged friends, including the German Shepherd mix belonging to the military family who bought Brenda's old house. Property values climbed thanks to national media coverage highlighting our community's inclusivity. Veteran families now seek out Meadowbrook Estates, knowing they'll be supported rather than persecuted for their service-related disabilities. A year later, I thrive in a neighborhood where neighbors wave instead of spy, where Rex can work without constant challenges, and where meetings focus on progress instead of intimidation. The irony isn't lost on me. Brenda's campaign produced the opposite of what she intended: a stronger, more united community that protects its most vulnerable. The social initiative we launched continues to grow. Rex's Fund has already helped 12 veterans with service dog training, with annual events raising over $25,000 for local veteran support. The VA Hospital Partnership hosts PTSD awareness programs, helping civilians understand military trauma, while connecting veterans with resources. Mrs. Olivia, now 81 and still bringing Rex homemade treats, summed it up best: good people make good neighborhoods when they stand together against bullies. Her simple wisdom captured the heart of what we all learned. Communities are strongest when they protect, not target, their most vulnerable. Here's the takeaway: federal protections for disabled Americans exist for situations exactly like ours. When you know your rights and document violations, standing up to bullies not only protects you, it makes the community safer for those who come after. So share your HOA nightmare stories in the comments. Let's expose these power-hungry bullies and help others know their rights. And don't forget to subscribe for more justice stories where the good guys actually win. Because fighting back isn't about revenge, it's about building a better world, one neighborhood at a time. That's a wrap for today's HOA story. If you enjoyed watching karma play out, hit like, drop a comment, and tell us your experiences too. Subscribe so you won't miss the next HOA meltdown.